started, I want to introduce Marc Blankenberg, our new athletic director, and let him say a few words and then we'll move forward.
Good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of the North Rose-Wolcott School District and the Athletic Department, I'd like to welcome you to the class of 2021 Hall of Fame induction. Again, my name is Marc Blankenberg. I'm the new athletic director. I'm very pleased to be in this position and continue to carry on the great athletic traditions that we've had at North Rose-Wolcott. As you folks know, a Hall of Fame is a very outstanding way to honor the accomplishments of our student athletes, of our coaches, and our significant contributors to the North Rose-Wolcott Athletic Department. Recognizing this greatness, this tradition, this in history is so very important. I'd like to give a lot of credit and recognition to Kathy Hoyt. It was her vision and determination that started the North Rose-Wolcott Athletic Hall of Fame, and I'm so proud that this tradition is carrying on, and hopefully this tradition will carry on for many, many years. I'd also like to thank Mike Lockwood. He's a name that's very synonymous with North Rose-Wolcott Athletics. He's the assistant in the athletic office, and a lot of his hard work helped make this day what it is in the past, and will continue to in the present. I'd like to thank our committee. Without the committee, obviously we wouldn't be here, so I want to make sure we recognize our committee. Kathy Hoyt, who we've already mentioned, Lisa Dean, Kristen DeFeo, Adam Hawley, Kim Jablonski, Gary Lockwood, Aaron Petrosino, Rob Yarrow, and I'd like to thank those members who are here today. But I want to give a big shout out especially to Mike Verts, our co-chair of the committee, and Duke Mitchell, who will also serve as today's MC of this event. So again, congratulations, inductees, committee members, thank you for your contributions to this organization and this great recognition. And let's enjoy this and have a nice afternoon. Thank you.
I'd like to welcome everyone, either in person or remotely, to the 2021 induction ceremony for the North Rose-Wolcott Athletic Hall of Fame. The entire committee is pleased that we could make this event happen, especially after the last year that we've all gone through. Today, we are here to recognize excellence in athletics, a critical component in one's high school career. We will honor 3 athletes, a coach, and an individual who gave so much to this community and others in the name of sport. Briefly, I want to explain the selection process. For athletes, individuals who were athletes and have been graduated a minimum of 10 years. Coaches, individuals who have made significant contributions to the athletic programs and have not been coaching for at least 5 years. And the honorary positions, individuals who have made a significant impact on NRW athletics or individuals who have contributed to athletics on a sectional, regional, state, national, professional, or international level. Basically what we do, we get together with our committee and we get nominations from individuals for future inductees. We go over the list and we make our selections. It's kind of a revolving door. We constantly are looking for new nominations and so on and so forth. But the main thing is each of the people that we honor, they're above average. As I tell people that I work with, being average is easy. It's a lot harder to excel. The people that we honor today and have honored in the past have excelled. As we proceed, we will begin with our athletes, and then the coach, and finally our honorary winner. I would invite any award winners who wish to say a few words after they receive their award. If you don't want to, that's fine. So we're going to start with Mr. Jermel Brown. It is certainly a pleasure for me to be here today to talk about one of the inductees to the NRW Athletic Hall of Fame, Jermel Brown. Jermel graduated in 2001. And while a student athlete here, he participated in several sports. And if you were to notice how tall he is, you probably could guess those sports, but I'll tell you anyway. Volleyball, basketball, and track and field in the high jump. Jermel was still, I'm sure, what I call a real player, and one who played at the highest level regardless of the sport. As a result of that level of play, he was chosen multiple times as an MVP and/or all-tournament award winner. As I mentioned earlier, he was a high jumper, and this is where he really stood out. And I had the privilege of coaching with him and working with him. We were talking about that out in the hall. And some of the things I used to try to put him through to getting better seemed to work. Three-time MVP, three-time All-County First Team, three-time Section 5 champion. And last but far from least, New York State high jump champion in 1999. I was one of the track coaches at that time and had the pleasure of working with Jermel in the high jump, and I must say it was fun to watch him progress over the years. We sure were chasing that 7 foot, weren't we? We chased it hard. Couldn't quite get there. But he still holds the school record at 6'10". Pretty close. He continued his sports career for several years while in college, and even now he still plays volleyball a couple times a week, you said, Jermel, is that right? Hard to get away from it, isn't it? Hard to get away from it. Today he lives in Wolcott, along with his wife Christy and children Trenton and Kay Marie. More record holders, maybe? Maybe. We'll see what happens. Congratulations, Jermel, on an awesome career as an athlete and as a person representing NRW and the community. Come on up, Jermel. Our next honoree is Mike DeWispelaere, and I'd like to call Joe Petrosino down here to make the induction.
Thanks, Duke. I'd like to thank Mr. Blankenberg, as well as the Hall of Fame Committee, and everybody that worked so hard to make this a special event for former athletes in North Rose-Wolcott. Growing up, I was involved in sports, like a lot of kids. Your parents, they throw you in it for something for you to do, right? To keep you busy. And I wasn't really in soccer as a kid. But in around 1992, I think I was in 4th or 5th grade. It would have been 5th grade. I remember waiting outside a PE class, and Mr. Jim Nealon was kind of responsible for recruiting ball boys for Scotty Martin. And I didn't really know what that was, but the other guys had their hands up, and so I put my hand up, and he was like, "Yeah, Joe, I'll put you on the list." So when I showed up that night, I was low man on the totem pole. So all my friends that had been doing it for a while, they got to go and be ball boys for the varsity, and I kind of got relegated down to the JV. And I remember the first time I went, and I was pretty bummed because I couldn't be on the varsity game, but it was at that moment where Mike was playing JV, and even when he was in 9th grade, there was this aura of Mike DeWispelaere in the way he played. He played the game in a way that everyone else on the field didn't. He always had fun. He usually had a smile on his face, but he had creativity and hustle that you knew that he wasn't quite as good as the varsity players. But even as a kid in 5th grade, I remember asking what his name was, and then the following year, Mike moved up to varsity. I moved up to 6th grade. It was the '93 team, and watching those guys come out with hoods up and warm-up tapes and the way they played and the fact that they won seemingly almost every single game, it really made soccer an important part of my life, and certainly something that was a goal of mine to do someday. Mike was only a sophomore, and he was playing with the likes of guys like, for those of you that were around back then, Josh Pulver and the Smith boys and Terry Moss and all these like local legends, if you will. And it would have been easy for a sophomore to kind of get lost, in that mix and not stand up, but that wasn't the case with Mike. He had a place on the team. He played well. And it certainly was a pivotal part of that team as they went on that state run, eventually losing to Cold Springs Harbor. Pulver would have headed the ball instead of punching it. It may have been a different story. At the conclusion of that season, his sophomore season, Mike was awarded second team All-County honors as a sophomore. That's something that a lot of players that go through high school and they never get those honors. And Mike was able to accomplish that at a very young age. In '94, I moved up to 7th grade, started playing myself. I was still a ball boy. And Mike continued to develop as a player and came out of his shell a little bit more. I remember, chasing after balls, going down the hill, throwing them to the guys, and most of them would just ignore us. But a lot of times, Mike, even in the middle of a game, you toss him a ball and he'd throw you that sideways smile that he has or that wink. And as a kid, that was a really, really big deal. Most of the varsity players didn't acknowledge us, or they were busy yelling at us. And we were always trying to hustle because God forbid you weren't paying attention and then you'd have to feel the wrath of Scotty Martin. A lot of us know what that was like. A few years later, I ran into Chris Smith and we were talking about soccer. I asked him one time about what made Mike so good. And Chris's answer was a great answer. He's like, Mike makes it up as he goes. When he's on the field, his level of creativity with a ball at his feet was unparalleled for anybody in the area playing soccer at that time. He did things with the ball that most of us never could do. I was certainly never able to do, despite the fact of emulating Mike in my backyard. And many of us young guys, when we'd be playing behind the goals during girls' games, and sometimes if they had too many ball boys, we would pretend that we were the varsity athletes. And Mike's legacy goes beyond just his own accolades and his own accomplishments. Mike inspired an entire generation of young guys that wanted to be like him and wanted to be like those guys that were winning. They certainly were better at soccer than we could ever be, but nonetheless, we were able to have a lot of success when we got to high school because we emulated them. Let's see, well, I'm a bit ahead of myself. His junior season, they didn't, I don't know where they lost, but they did not have the state run that they would have his senior year. When they became seniors, there wasn't a game in which Mike DeWispelaere wasn't the best player on the field. The most notable game, for me anyways, was they played, I believe it was sectionals, and it was a torrential downpour. And there were puddles everywhere in the field. It was horrible soccer. People would hit passes, the ball would get stuck. People would be dribbling and they would continue, but the ball would be stuck to them. And DeWispelaere was running around the field the entire time, lifting balls out of puddles after puddle with his foot, and was the only really effective player on the team that day, or for both teams. He would hit slide tackles from 15 feet away. One of the other favorite parts about Mike DeWispelaere was watching him, lash out and use a little of that physicality that was so often used against him. Because most teams, they couldn't stop him with their ability or stop them with their skill. The only way that they could stop him was literally beating him up and putting him on the ground and going after his knees and going after his ankles. It's really a testament to his ability and his skill. He carried his team to a second state final for him in 3 years. Eventually they lose to KO. I still hear that chant that they went for that entire game. But his legacy, as I said earlier, goes beyond just what he did on the field. When we came up, my team, we did win sections. We didn't go to states or anything like that. We didn't have a guy like Mike DeWispelaere. But we emulated everything that they did on the field. We even picked silly things like the warm-up music that the 95 team had. We had a list of all of their songs that they put on their warm-up tape and went through and selected almost the exact same songs in the exact same order, because for us to be good and to be successful, you had to be like they were. And it wasn't just the way they carried themselves on the field and the fact that they were good, it was also the fact that they were there for us as young people growing up. They would run soccer camps and talk to us and make us feel special. His senior year, Mike ended up being awarded first team All-County, first team All-Greater Rochester. He was named to the All-Section 5 tournament team. He was awarded Section 5 Class CC tournament MVP. And lastly, he made the All-State team that year. Those accolades are typically reserved for players that play club, or they play in Monroe County, or they get their names in the D&C more often, not playing out in rural areas like North Rose-Wolcott. But Mike was able to accomplish that because of his skill and because how unique he was and how special he was. To this day, I don't think I have ever seen a player as silky on a ball as DeWispelaere was. The people he played with still talk about his abilities. I know of more than one player that had much better junior and sophomore years in high school because they played with Mike DeWispelaere, and he would spoon feed guys in front of the goal where the only option they had was to put it in. Because as he would dribble through the entire team, everyone would collapse on him, and he would hit a little pass to Clevenger or whoever, and they would bury it for the victory. My team certainly would never have been different. Myself as a soccer player, I never would have been as good of a player as I was without individuals like Mike DeWispelaere to look up to. I consider myself lucky to have played with him after high school. That we played on an indoor team together, and it was like I was a little fanboy running around and laughing every single time that I had the opportunity to play with him. He certainly was one of my heroes growing up, certainly an individual I looked up to often on the field. He made a profound impact on my life. He forever kind of changed the direction of North Rose-Wolcott soccer, at least for the 90s. Today, he still gives back to the community. He's coaching a U15 team, a U11 team. He's coaching baseball, and the community is really, really lucky to have him. So, Mike, congratulations. Thank you for everything. Ladies and gentlemen, Mikey D.
Now I'd like to ask Gary Lockwood to come up, and Gary's going to induct his niece, Kelly Lockwood.
Well, it's an honor to be up here to do this, for my niece especially. I've been on the committee since it formed. I've been doing this for, I don't know how many years we've been doing this, but been on it. And it's kind of weird to see this because normally we have a nice little luncheon out there and everybody gets together. And I'll be glad when this stuff goes away. But Kelly was an athlete, from 1972 to 1984. Her swimming and her soccer all through middle school and high school. Volleyball, she played at the varsity level for 4 years as a volleyball in high school. After that, she graduated and did 2 years of collegiate soccer at Orange County Community College, where they were 4th in the nation for a junior college. She was also a Bradbury Award winner in 1982. She was a coach and assistant for soccer from 2005 to 2017. And currently, she is an occupational therapist for 37 years at the Wayne Finger Lakes BOCES. And she's got her niece my other niece, her sister, and I got my great nieces, and her 2 daughters are here, Erin and Alex. I had an opportunity to, you sit there and say, how come Kelly, there's no basketball in here? Everybody knows I coach basketball. I don't know. Kelly couldn't do this, I guess. I don't know what it was. But I never had a chance to do that. She was always swimming or doing other things. But I did have an opportunity to coach my 2 greater nieces. I wish I had an opportunity to coach Kelly at basketball, but she would have been great at that too. I know she would have. At this time, I'd like to introduce Kelly Ferrente.
And the reason I want to talk is there's so many people to thank for all these years. As I was filling out the form, and I like, oh my gosh, I'm 57 years old, and the majority of my life has been with athletics, and that shapes a person. And I don't think I'd be the person I am today if it wasn't for that. And firstly, thank you for the community for this opportunity, this great honor. And all my coaches and all the people that helped me to develop as a coach. And my first person I want to thank, I wish he was here, is Mr. Martin. I started competitively swimming with him. I think it's somewhere between 8 and 10 years old. And in those days, you know, my parent would take me to the BT Sports Shop in Fulton. I think it's still there, to pick out a bathing suit. There was no matching suits for our teams, and we just had to show up and do the best we could. And that was for quite a lot of summers. We used to go to Victor and Canandaigua to swim, and that really just Scotty's influence on me really just developed me as a person. And you know, you really learn commitment, you learn the perseverance, and just a little bit of heartache and how to deal with heartache. You know, you would be the type of person, you'd come out of the pool and you didn't get the time you wanted, or you didn't beat the person you wanted to beat. You'd be like, okay, this is what we're going to do. This is what we're doing next week in practice, and you'll get there. And he did that for everybody. And it wasn't just me, and it wasn't just the better athletes. Even in grade school, I remember Mrs. Reynolds. I think her name is Jan Reynolds. I don't know if anybody remembers. She was a huge influence. We used to have field days then, and she was someone who would push you to really, if that was your interest, to really push you to do the best you possibly could. And then in middle school with soccer and volleyball and swimming, Mrs. 25 was there. And then Dale Bingley and Deb Du Bois were my first volleyball coaches, and they really developed that love for volleyball for me, and I've loved it ever since then. And then for, let's see, swimming was, of course, Scotty still in those days. And to answer the basketball question, in those days, girls could do 4 sports. So because we swam in the spring then, we played soccer in the fall, and then in that winter, you had the volleyball and basketball. And unfortunately, I started out in basketball, but my parents had to make me make a choice between that, my schoolwork, and a boyfriend. So I chose the other. So I never developed in the basketball. And my soccer coaches at the time were Joe and Lenny Stoll. And then once my girls got to the age where you know, they wanted to start sports, and I said, well, this is how I'm giving back, because that's just what you do. You know, I had a lot of guidance from Mike Birds and Jamie Carr, and certainly Amy Brownlee. A lot of good years for that. And always the people in the background were Deke and Gary and Mr. Woods, who would give you advice on, you know, how to deal with some maybe difficult athletes or parents. But again, I thank everybody, and I thank my family for being here on this beautiful sunny day. I know we all want to be out in our gardens, so thank you.
You still got time.
But anyway, Kathy was supposed to induct Tom Tathum. And Tom was a basketball coach here and had some administrative roles and so on. And unfortunately, it's 2:26 and he's in Naples, Florida, sitting in a church somewhere at a wedding of some very good friend. So obviously he didn't get here. But anyway, I'm going to take care of that. Tom spent over 40 years in various segments of education, but during his tenure here at NRW, he was best known as the basketball coach, and he spent a little bit of time as AD. He was demanding, but only because he wanted the best from not only his team players, but from all the students he came in contact with in this school. Most coaches would agree that coaching is a form of teaching, and as such, one needs to recognize differences in abilities and dedication to the task. Tom certainly did that on a regular basis. Since his retirement, Tom has been involved with the Central New York National Football Foundation in its high school football classic held at the Carrier Dome. He also has been involved with the Special Olympics, which is held at Cicero North Syracuse, which is where he went from here to be involved for the rest of his career. As I said, Tom is winters in Naples, and he sends his regards to everyone. Probably there's a lot of people in here that don't remember him, but there may be some that do. But he wishes you all well. Thank you, Tom, for everything you did for North Rose-Wolcott. You made a difference in students' lives. And as I said, Tom lives in Central Square with his wife Joyce right now and spends time with his grandkids when he can. So congratulations to Mr. Tathum, and we're going to send him his award. Our final inductee today is our honorary position, and the gentleman's name is Pete Stewart. And the saddest part about this whole thing is this ceremony was supposed to be held last year, and Pete's health was pretty fragile at that point, and sadly, Pete passed away earlier this year. So it's a very unfortunate thing, but that's the way it is. But anyway, today we have John Sklenar here, and John was a student of Pete's in soccer, and we're going to let him make the presentation. John, please.
So Pete was aware of his nomination and he was looking forward to it. Unfortunately, he ended up in the hospital and then into rehab. And then of course COVID came and he made about a year, and then he ended up getting COVID and died like 3 weeks after that. So he passed away January 26th, age 78 at the Center for Rehab in Waterloo. My name is John Sklenar. I graduated from here at NRW in 1986. I've played with Pete forever, and I took over the men's team probably 10 or 15 years ago. And during those years, I really kind of got to know Pete at a different level than I did as a kid. Pete really had significant impact in my life. It seemed like such a simple thing to, take some kids out and play soccer, but he really did have an impact in my life. I met him 45 years ago, likely on July 1st, 1976. You may wonder how I know that day specifically, as this is the impact he had on me. I had the first check that I ever wrote to Jet Soccer Club back in July 1st, 1976. Almost every day of my life involves soccer, whether playing, coaching, watching, talking about it, and I have Pete to thank for that. As kids, we would get excited when we saw Pete's light blue Scout come kicking up dust down the road behind the North Rose-Wolcott Hall. We knew that there was something fun in store, practice or a game to watch. So Pete started Jet Soccer in 1967, and he was not a soccer player. He didn't know anything about soccer, but he worked at Gould's Pumps in Seneca Falls, and there were some new guys there from out of the country that didn't speak English, and Pete decided he would help them get a team started. He got a team started and came to North Rose a few years later, and here we are 54 years later, and his legacy still lives on. Most of the people in my life, like I said, I'm soccer involved with soccer almost every day, so most of the people in my life are soccer related. People I've coached with, people I've coached, people I've played with, people that my kids played with. I recently made a new friend through soccer who is from Marcus Whitman, and of course I'm still running the men's team, so I'm always trying to recruit players. Fortunately, it looks like I made a good decision in getting Mike a few years ago. But this player knew of Pete. He lived out in Marcus Whitman, and he was telling me that he used to play indoor at the chiropractic college, that Pete had a league organized there that he used to run, and he used to have a table up front with VHS tapes just, piled up on the table of Premier League games, because everybody didn't have access to see those games like we do now, and he would leave those out there, and he would tell the kids to take what you want, go home, watch them, just bring them back so somebody else can watch them, later. So Pete was always giving, trying to encourage and promote the sport of soccer. I know that Pete's impact isn't unique to me. I mean, Mike, I don't know if he ever coached you, but Jet Soccer has impacted you, I know, just hearing what we just heard. And that is all, thanks to Pete. I came today from a practice in Irondequoit, and Mike and I are going out after this to another practice for our Jets men's team. So Pete's gift to us just keeps on giving. I have on my wall in my office at home all the teams that I've coached or played with, college, high school. I have to give a plug to 1986, the only class to win back-to-back sectional titles. But I have a picture from middle 70s and a picture, recent picture, of the Jets team. And the thing I love about it is there's people in both of those pictures that I still play with. People that I've been playing soccer with for 45 years. So I just really thank Pete for what he's given us. Pete was always the first to the field. Mike, you can attest to this, and the last to leave, because he's setting up his 3 cameras and taking them down afterwards. The following week he'd come with fully edited versions on DVD for everybody, and have some for the other team the next time we play them. Just absolutely amazing how willing he was to give. He even had the ability, sometimes when the games got a little heated, to be able to bring everybody together at the end for a team group picture of all of us. Truly unique. Pete always thought of us as his kids. He never had a family of his own. I was thinking about, he moved on from the light blue Scout to a big blue van. And just coming here, I was thinking about that, and just maybe it dawned on me at that moment, he had no kids. Don't know why he needed a van other than to drive us all to all our travel games. We all packed in that van. So again, just another way he was giving and not asking for anything back. I'm honored to accept this award for Pete and his large Jet soccer family. Pete gave his time freely to us to give us the gift of soccer and has nothing in return. So thank you, Pete. You will be missed. One more thing is that we are adding a patch to our uniforms this summer with Pete's honor. So.
One of the things about Pete that I think it's mentioned in the program is that one of his sayings was always a soccer fan, and I think that probably sums up the Pete Stewart that I knew when I knew very little of him, other than he was a fixture out here in this field at soccer games. Had his chair set up, and as John said, the cameras. It was inevitable, and the weather didn't make any difference. Pete came to soccer games. Originally, the field at North Rose, down here behind the North Rose School, which is now the middle school, I guess. The elementary school. That was originally Pete Stewart Field. Now the sign is out at Marshall Park. And that's just, I think, is another tribute to Pete and what he meant to the soccer community, not only here, but everywhere. It was really something else. Okay, that kind of wraps it up. On the behalf of the committee and the current Hall of Fame members, I would like to officially welcome all of the recipients to the North Rose-Wolcott Athletic Hall of Fame. Each of you represents excellence in sports, as I mentioned earlier. It is our hope that as other people walk down the hall and look at the names out there on those plaques, perhaps it will somehow inspire them to do what it takes to get their name on the wall and join this exclusive group of individuals. Now, I told Jermel that I was going to put him on the spot, and I'm also going to put Kelly and Mike on the spot. We are constantly looking for nominees, people that were in your classes that represent excellence in sports. So please, if you have some names, get them to someone so that we can get them in the pool and continue to advance this Athletic Hall of Fame. We don't want to see it die because we don't have people. I know doggone well that there's a lot of people that you guys and girls know that were excellent athletes, above average, as I mentioned in the beginning, that deserve a place on the wall. And my thanks to all the committee members, Mike Lockwood, Marc, as our athletic director, and co-chair Mike Verts, for helping to put this program together. It's very important to all of us that we continue this. And thank you for coming, and to all our new inductees, welcome to the club. Thanks.